Hey, this is Senator Justin Reedy coming to you from Annapolis at the end of week 7 of the 2023 General Assembly session. We are just past now the halfway point of the 90-day session and expect in the next 2 to 3 weeks for us to be very busy as we head towards what's known as crossover week. It's usually about the third to last week of the session. Your bills have to get out of the Senate and over to the House by that time for them to have a real chance of passing in the House and vice versa. We've got a lot of bills that have sort of stacked up, a lot of big issues the General Assembly has said that they want to work on, everything from the regulation for the new marijuana that we allow to criminal justice to the budget. A lot of things are really kind of backloaded here. We're going to be very busy in the coming weeks. I don't necessarily mind that we're a little bit behind schedule because there's a lot of bills that I think are bad bills that have not moved. But I think some of that's about to change, and I'll keep you posted on that as we move forward. The big news this week, we had the vote on the Department of Juvenile Services Secretary appointee. I've shared how I was opposed to that nomination. Not even so much about the person involved, although the person they've nominated, Mr. Schiraldi, is very, very progressive, has a very sort of progressive left view of criminal justice, particularly juvenile justice. I've elaborated on that some in things that I've put out. The main issue that concerns me, it's what I spoke about when I spoke against his nomination and voted against it on the Senate floor, is the overall bent of the approach to criminal justice in our state right now, particularly as it relates to juvenile crime, which is really rising and almost out of control in some parts of our state. We've got to stop having the attitude that we're being too tough on the offender, and instead focus on we want to rehabilitate young offenders, juvenile offenders, but we've got to have accountability, discipline, responsibility, and they have to learn that kind of responsibility so that they can be rehabilitated. You can't just have restoration to a community without the kind of discipline, accountability, and the making amends that needs to happen. And so I'm going to continue, even though the nominee obviously went through and was passed, I'm going to continue to try to hold their feet to the fire and keep pushing. We need real consequences and real consequences for criminal behavior, and I'm going to continue working on that. Also this week, the Senate Republican Caucus and the House Republican Caucus joined together on a press conference to call attention to something that a lot of people may not have been aware of in all of the soaring rhetoric from our new governor about leaving no one behind, which of course I agree with leaving no one behind. Who wouldn't? That his budget actually cuts money from what's called the Boost program, which is a small pot of money that underprivileged children can use to escape failing schools. They can get some money to go to another alternative school, like a private school, and escape failing schools. And this program helps thousands of children, largely, frankly, poor and underprivileged children. And the governor, in his budget proposal, cut 20% of those funds. Meanwhile, record high spending for K through 12 public education, $8.8 billion in the governor's proposed budget for public education. And this little fund had $10 million in it. They cut $2 million. So we're fighting to do two things. One is we want to restore that $2 million makes up. There's thousands of kids just with $2 million that can utilize that to continue having this opportunity to escape a failing school. And then number two, we want to actually see that become codified in state law so that every year you can count on knowing there's going to be a pot of money that can help these kind of students. I'd like to see more school choice, period. But it starts with preserving this Boost fund. So that was something we spent a good bit of time talking about this week. And I actually got some positive news today that some of our Senate Democratic colleagues seem very open to trying to restore that funding. So that could be good news. We're going to keep working on that. And then finally, I'll close with sort of a bipartisan positive thing that's moving in the General Assembly. I had legislation along with Delegate Tomlinson about broadband connectivity. There are now a whole lot of federal and state grants that can go to small businesses or large businesses that want to put in place broadband infrastructure in underserved and rural areas. So many parts of Carroll County, I know, big frustration that we can't get reliable broadband internet. There's now lots of stuff coming down the pike where there's money available for private companies to invest. They get some state funds, but then they're able to invest and help connect areas of our county, areas of our state that don't have reliable broadband. Unfortunately, we discovered all this stuff rolling out so fast over the last year, those grant funds are actually taxable, though, for the business. The business right now, if we don't change state law, you'd have to pay state income tax on federal or state dollars that you got, basically be handing the money back that you just got. and it can't go towards meeting the need in the broadband communities, the broadband needs. And so Delegate Tomlinson and I have legislation that we've had the hearings on to make that exempt from state taxation. There's legislation working at the federal level, sponsored actually by our U.S. Senator Ben Cardin, the Democrat, to try to remove the federal taxation on it. And Governor Moore has actually made that a part of his broadband initiative overall to try to also, he's got that in part of what he's pushing for as well. So there's good news on that. Hopefully we'll get that passed and moved so that will help us as we continue to try to meet that need of reliable broadband internet for Carroll, Frederick County, and all around the state. As you can see by the length of this video, there's a lot of things that have been happening. I encourage you to please feel free to contact my office if you have any questions. If you want to be added to our email list, because we put out a lot of good information, feel free to send us a message wherever you're seeing this on Facebook or Instagram, or contact our office. And I look forward to updating you again next week. Thanks a lot.